Welcome back everyone. Figured I'd try out something new for the next few episodes. I'm going to try to stick to a theme. This time, I'd like to focus on weapons. Weapons are a really integral and interesting part of Hearthstone, and I'd love to see more implemented in the future, so let's jump right into it. We started off our first episode with a reimagining of ATS, so why not keep up the tradition? This version is a little different though. I've always thought a weapon that increases spell damage was a good idea for mages, but this one takes it to the next level. Instead of having an attack value, its durability is reduced by 1 whenever you cast a damaging spell. This would be an incredibly powerful card because as of now, the only way to increase spell power is through minions. Minions are usually either quickly dispatched or silenced before you can get much out of them. However, a weapon can really only be gotten rid of at the user's discretion or a select few minions. Gladiator's Cleaver is a 4/3 warrior weapon for 6 mana. It comes with a sort of faux Wind Fury that only activates after you destroy an enemy minion. I like that this weapon has the option to attack twice, but only comes with 3 durability. This encourages using the weapon with or without both attacks, and I feel it's pretty balanced even for its steep 6 mana requirement. Next up we have another warrior weapon, the legendary Shadowmourne. 7 mana for a 3/4 sounds ridiculously underpowered, but its ability could be quite handy. Whenever you kill a minion, you also deal 1 damage to all enemy characters. This opens up a ton of options, including whittling down stragglers, squeezing a few extra points of damage through for lethal, allowing execute, and popping all divine shields in one swing. The only real downside to it is triggering enrage abilities that you meant to avoid. At turn 7, a 3 damage weapon might not be the most useful, but I still think this card is well balanced and perfectly viable. This is an interesting one that I'm not sure how I feel about. First of all, Valenier breaks a lot of rules right away. It requires you to attack your own minions and attack while you have an attack value of 0, both of which are currently impossible. It also brings up a few questions. Do you take damage from attacking your own minions? If a minion gets misdirected into you, does the effect trigger? Assuming all of the rules this card breaks are possible, this card is fairly balanced but maybe a little overpowered. The healing it offers takes a back seat to the immunity. For 3 turns in a row, you could get away with trades without risking any health from your minion. Seeing as how it costs 6 mana, you'll most likely only be buffing large creatures too. It's an interesting card to say the least, but not something I'd expect to see implemented anytime soon. Shadow's Edge is really awesome. I'm not sure if it was meant to be given a class, but it seems to be a neutral weapon, which I'm always on board with. 3 mana for a 3/2 makes it a slightly more expensive Fiery War Axe, which would already probably be balanced seeing as how it is usable by any class. On top of that, if you can destroy an enemy minion with it, which shouldn't be too difficult considering how powerful the War Axe is even on later turns, it grants your hero stealth until your next turn. That is incredibly powerful. Especially late game, avoiding all minion attacks and being untargetable by spells is huge and can easily keep you alive for an extra turn. In my opinion, this card should probably cost at least 5 mana or have its stats altered a bit, as it's very powerful as it stands, especially for a neutral weapon. Here's another priest weapon with an interesting albeit slightly out of place ability. 2 mana for a 1/3 weapon is strictly worse than Light's Justice, but its ability can be very powerful. Whenever you attack, refresh one of your empty mana crystals. The wording is very important here. You cannot use this weapon to gain an extra mana crystal, but if you've already spent at least one, you can refill it. So while it doesn't allow you to, say, play a Yeti on turn 3, it does allow you to play more cheap cards in one turn. It might be useful to also mention that you could use this card to play a 1-drop after Mind Control as well. Pretty well balanced, and I like it. Staff of the Arcane Path is a short and sweet mage card. I will add, however, that I really love the art on this one. As a 1/2 for 2 mana, it holds many of the same strengths as the ATS I talked about earlier. It's spell damage that's hard to remove and still allows the option of dealing 1 damage if you really need it. Fangs of the Father is obviously meant to be a rogue card. At 5 mana for a 3/3, it's almost balanced. If it didn't have an ability, I'd expect at least 1 more attack and durability. You can't count out the ability though, as it is incredibly powerful. It allows you to trigger combos by attacking with it. A fairly straightforward card, and there isn't much else to say about it. However, I do wonder, would attacking with it add an additional combo charge for Van Cleef? The wording makes it sound like it would, and in my opinion it should. As far as a legendary rogue weapon goes, I don't think it could get much better than this. Murder of Bows. Punny name aside, this card is pretty great. Compared to Fangs of the Father, it's got the same mana cost and attack and durability. Its ability isn't quite as powerful as Fangs, however this card is also common, whereas Fangs was a legendary. Murder of Bows gains +1 attack if a friendly beast has died this turn. Obviously this synergizes well with both Scavenging Hyena and Unleash the Skill, although I don't really understand it flavorfully. Overall, however, it's a great card and I enjoy seeing common cards. Not every card needs to be game-changing. Hunting Gun is another cool weapon that doesn't need to be revolutionary. 4 mana for a 2/4 and it deals double damage to any minions that cost 5 or more. There isn't much to say about this one. It's pretty well balanced and flexible, entering play right before its ability becomes super relevant. I do wonder if this would trigger on minions who cost more due to Freezing Trap or Venture Co. Merc. That would make the card a lot more powerful and synergize well with hunters. Windlord's Ruin is very similar to Gladiator's Cleaver. It has a faux Wind Fury and an odd number of durability, promoting flexibility and using it without the Wind Fury. It shares the same mana cost as well with slightly altered stats. It also has an overload of 1. I'm on the fence whether or not this is well balanced. The 5 durability is great, but on turn 6, even with this ability, I'm not sure how useful 3 attack will be. If anything, it might be a tad underpowered, but a good card nonetheless. I love this card more for its flavor than its actual ability. Training Rifle is a 2-cost hunter weapon with 1/3, but each time you attack, it gains an attack. This is actually incredibly powerful on turn 2, allowing you to control the board really well even up to turn 5. The flavor on it is awesome too, representing that the person using the training rifle is gaining skill as he uses it. Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker. Besides the ridiculously long name, this card is interesting. For 3 mana, you get a 2/3 that also deals 1 damage to minions adjacent to the one you attack. This matches Thunder Fury's in-game ability pretty well, and as a Hearthstone card would be very powerful. As a legendary, however, I expected it to be a bit of a later turn drop. I feel this card would be viable even if it was 5 mana with a slightly buffed attack. I'm not sure if this card was meant to be assigned to a specific class, but as a neutral weapon, this would be a must-have for most decks. I love this card, but right off the bat, I think it should only have 1 or 2 durability. Hellreaver is a 4 mana for 2/3, but each turn you don't attack with it, it gains 1 attack. This is cool and serves as a growing threat that can eventually dispatch late game minions or put your opponent on a harsh clock if you can get it up to even 6 or 7 attack. This card would also be really powerful in a top deck battle, allowing you to slowly build up lethal damage no matter what you draw. The art is awesome too. Aura Stone Hammer is great, and I believe it actually works well as a neutral weapon. 4 mana for a 2/2 makes its actual attack more of a bonus than its main strength. It increases all of your healing done by 1, however, and since all classes have access to at least a couple of healing cards, this could be useful, but not nearly as much as it would be in Paladin or Priest. Speaking of Priest, this would make your hero power heal for 3, which would be incredibly powerful. I like this card as it provides healing without being as overpowered or broken as Valanir. Gavel of Righteousness is a paladin weapon that reminds me of Shadow Edge. 4 mana for a 3/3, and it gives your hero a Divine Shield. I like the idea of giving heroes Stealth or Divine Shield, but unlike Shadow Edge, this card only applies its ability once. Even without that, it's a perfectly viable weapon, being useful for at least a turn or 2 before it becomes situational. Deadly Kriss is a rogue weapon with an awesome ability. 5 mana for a 2/2 would normally be garbage, but its ability is the same as Emperor Cobra. It destroys any minion it damages, so if you have enough health to justify taking the damage, you can destroy even the strongest creatures with this. 2 durability is about perfect, although it would also be viable if it was only a 1/1. I love this card since I think Death Touch is a little underrepresented in the game currently. Charging Hammer is essentially Hellreaver with a bit more balance. A Shaman weapon, Charging Hammer is a 1/1 for 1 that gains an attack every turn you don't attack. As opposed to Hellreaver, this weapon can be charged from turn 1 until you need it, meaning it will most likely be able to get rid of whatever threat you need on whatever turn you decide to use it. It only has 1 durability, however, which I think is actually more balanced. I'd love to see a card like this implemented, as I think it's a great mechanic. I'm a big fan of Thoradal, as it brings an interesting new idea for the hunter hero power. While Thoradal is equipped, you can target enemy minions with your hero power at the cost of 1 durability. You can also attack with it, which is more of a bonus seeing as how it is 2 attack on turn 5. It also makes the hunter hero power strictly better than the mage power, but so does a priest's shadow form, so it's not so bad. I think this card is pretty well balanced, especially for a legendary, and I really like it. Lastly, we've got this episode's premier holy shit card, Divine Recognition. 6 mana to discard your hand and draw 4 light cards. All of the light cards range from being slightly overpowered to perfectly balanced, which is actually perfect considering you not only have to throw away your hand, but you also roll the dice and hope you get something you can use. Along with your basic healing, damage, and silence spells, you can get a collection of minions, including a legendary. The legendary, Faith Laris, has an interesting ability. He's Outdoor Peacekeeper on drugs, essentially. 7 mana for a 1/7, he changes a random enemy minion's attack to 1. If you've got good board control, you can lock down any minions he plays from that point on. I love seeing cards that can add exclusive cards like this to your hand, and this one is balanced and perfectly viable. That covers all the custom cards I have for you this time, so let's move on to Fix This card. Last time I asked you guys how you'd go about fixing Outnumbered Swordsman. Here's the response I chose. Outnumbered Swordsman is way too gimmicky, thus bad. Too weak if the enemy has no minions on the board, and only good if it has 4 or more. I would make it a 5/5 and only gains +1 attack for every enemy minion on the field. So best case scenario, it's a 12/5. This time around, instead of asking you to fix a card, I'd like to see your own card designs under a certain rule set. Cards that really stand out to me will be featured on the next episode. So what's the next theme going to be? Battle cries. Create some cards with an interesting battle cry ability and send them to me via a YouTube message or contact me on Skype. Contact information will be in the description, as well as a link to the custom card creator I use. Can't wait to hear from you, and thanks for watching, guys.